This is the Weather Lounge here at WeatherWorks.
Hello and thank you for joining us once again here in the Weather Lounge. I'm your host, Meteorologist Brad Miller, and our fresh podcast comes to you from our WeatherWorks home office located in Hackettstown, New Jersey. And joining me as always for a podcast cocktail here in the Weather Lounge is my graceful co-host, meteorologist Mike Mahalik. Hello there, Mike.
Hey, Brad. Podcast cocktail.
Yeah, it's the Weather Lounge. We're gonna sit back and have a little podcast cocktail.
Yeah, I like that. How are things with you, Brad? Do you feel okay? Everything good?
Yeah, I probably shouldn't have had that second glass of wine last night. But why? Why do you ask?
I'm just wondering because today we're going to talk about the weather and your health. Yeah,
I'm a little groggy. I'm okay though. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, although the weather doesn't have an effect on you having an extra glass of wine last night. But I'm sure our listeners know what we mean when we talk about how the weather can affect us from a day-to-day standpoint and throughout the year. And joining us on the Weather Lounge today is somebody here at WeatherWorks. One of our meteorologists actually has done quite a bit of research on how the weather can impact your health. And although she's not a doctor, she did stay at a Holiday Inn Express. That's a terrible joke. But hey, Jen, what's going on?
Hi, guys. How are you doing?
Yeah, introduce yourself, Jen. Let our listeners know, who you are. And
she's a Long Island girl.
I am from Long Island. Yes. But hi, everyone. I'm Jen D'lorio, and as Mike alluded to, I am not a doctor. I am a degreed meteorologist from Penn State, but one of the things that has always interested me is the way that weather can have an impact on your health. And the reason why this did interest me is because in addition to, kind of doing the research, what prompted me to do the research to start with is I noticed a lot of correlations with myself of how weather impacts my health specifically. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But then that allowed me to get, kind of do some research, ask my doctors and, things like that. And just have kind of taken some notes over the years and just kind of, pulled together what we're going to talk about today. So.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's so everyone's different when it comes to, the weather and your health, and, everyone's affected in different ways. So, again, I want to thank you so very much for joining us today, Jen. And, let's start with the most common health issue when it comes to weather. And, it goes right on into, it's a good segue, I guess, because as we're going into early spring now, and that's allergy season. I think that just seems like it's the biggest topic when it comes to weather and health, and so many people are impacted by it.
I would agree. Yeah. I mean, I think I can count on my number of one hand how many people I know that don't have allergies. So
funny story about allergies though. For a while I didn't have them at all, and then they eventually kind of came on as I got older.
That happens too. Yeah. Allergies are like, honestly, if I wasn't going to be a meteorologist, I think allergies are so interesting. Maybe I'd become an allergist because there's so many things they can come on at different points in life. Stress can trigger allergies. I mean, there's just a whole slew of things, but
maybe because in the past times that I've worked landscaping for years, they've just bombarded me so much that eventually
maybe your body became immune to it to a point or something.
Yeah, but it was like almost like the other way around. Like all of a sudden, like my body couldn't handle it anymore. I was like, "That's it. I can't keep holding off these pollens and everything you're throwing at me every spring and fall." So anyway, last interruption, I promise.
No, that is all good. But yeah, so the spring 2022 allergy season is unfortunately already upon us, especially since it really kind of started ramping up like a week ago today, so last Tuesday. And according to pollen.com and a few of my doctors that I've seen, we have seen medium to high levels of allergens for the last few days, especially with some of the recent warmth, sunshine, etc. In the spring, the main cause of allergies comes from tree pollen, which typically peaks early to mid-spring. I know that's the number one. Spring is my worst season, and I'm most allergic to trees. So trees are out to get me. But A secondary cause.
You're not a tree hugger then.
I'm not a tree hugger. I'm definitely not, especially in the spring.
Not that we're trying to stereotype anything, but it was just kind of, I was thinking that in my head. I was like, if Jen hugged a tree,
It would not be good.
It probably wouldn't be a good thing.
No, it would not.
Our eyes would be all red, and be wondering about something else. Why are your eyes so red, Jen? I swear it's the pollen.
I was hugging trees. So yeah, tree pollen is the #1 cause of spring allergies. A secondary cause is grass pollen, but that begins to bloom mid to late spring, and then it actually peaks in the early summer. So the #1 cause of summer allergies comes from grass pollen. Weed pollen can also contribute to spring allergies, though the peak season for that doesn't ramp up into the fall. So spring, main cause is tree pollen, summer, grass pollen. Fall is weed pollen, and then winter is your indoor allergies.
Right. So, see, that's the thing is like, when you think of pollen and you think of allergies, you think, it's the spring but it's not. You just said all 4 seasons. So basically it's a year-round thing, and probably just the worst of it is in the spring.
Yeah, and it's all dependent on what you specifically have an allergy to. I mean, I get allergy shots. I'm actually going later today. So I know that, trees are my worst allergen. Weeds are my second. So spring is my worst season. Fall is my second worst. And then I have some indoor allergies as well. That can be mold, dust, pet dander. And then I'm not allergic to grass at all. So summer is by far my best season. So it's all kind of, and you can find that out by going to, an allergy specialist, by doing specific types of testing. They can tell you exactly what you're allergic to. So that way, you know how you can treat it, or, doing some type of allergy shots or something like that. I won't get into that specifically, because we could spend a whole another 45 minutes talking about that. But, that's why I said allergies are so interesting to me.
When I lived down south, I lived down south for almost 20 years in South Carolina, and the one thing that we always had, and it usually started about the middle of February, was the tree pollen. But this was you would see it. It wasn't like you would see it blowing around. Once in a while you'll see like a good breeze even up here, and you'll see it kind of blow out of a tree. Well, it would dust up. You would have an accumulation of pollen on your car, on the sidewalk, on your house, inside your house. If you have to close your windows sometimes on a nice early spring day, because there's so much pollen, and then when you get a good rainstorm, it kind of puddles it up and just collects. It's so disgusting almost, but that's just kind of the rite of spring down south, and it's usually gone though by March. It's just like a late February, early March thing. It's weird.
Right.
So Brad, instead of certified snowfall
Yeah.
totals that we can do certified pollen totals.
Yep. It would be like a full coating. Yeah, it wouldn't be a widely scattered or scattered coat. It would be a coating of pollen.
A coating of pollen. That just sounds fantastic.
Less than a tenth, though. Less than a tenth.
Yeah, and allergies are so tough, especially in this time, when we're dealing with the pandemic, and things are slowing down there. But anytime you get sick, and then you're trying to figure out, well, now that we're into allergy season, is it allergies that it's making me sneeze and get stuffy and all that kind of stuff, or is it something else? And I think everything's been a little bit complicated by the pandemic situation a little bit.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I just had that the other day. I was like, oh no, my throat's a little scratchy, and then it's like, oh right, allergy season. We're back. We're back.
So Jen, how does like let's take for example like certain scenarios with the weather, a wetter spring, a drier spring, going into like a wetter summer. How does that play out in the end with the allergies and the pollen and things like that?
Yeah. So what's been, what researchers have found is that temperature and moisture have the strongest influence on the severity of allergy season and the symptoms, because it directly impacts pollen and mold growth. So just a few scenarios: a warmer than usual winter or an early snow melt can allow mold to flourish and trees to pollinate sooner, which can allow for allergy symptoms in individuals to begin sooner, become more intense, and last longer. a wetter spring promotes rapid plant growth and mold intensification. So, that April showers bring May flowers type of scenario, is when mold can kind of really thrive and feed off those wet and damp conditions. And that can, cause symptoms to develop quickly and severely. Though rain in some situations, like for example, let's say we've had a warm, dry, kind of windy stretch in spring. When the rain comes in, it can come in, wash away all that airborne pollen, and can kind of briefly ease those itchy eyes and watery nose. Excuse me, before, then allowing for mold to flourish a little bit there. A spring with hot stretches can also allow for more intense periods of pollen, and dry and windy weather is honestly kind of the worst thing for pollen. So I know today, in Hackettstown, we're going to be dry. We're going to be a little bit warm. We're going to have a little bit of a breeze that can allow some of this pollen to spread a little bit farther and a little bit more quickly. So, that can worsen symptoms throughout the allergy season.
Yeah, I know the one time, I believe it was last year, the pollen was so bad. I was out mowing my grass, and it was a windy, dry type of day. And I even tried, hey, maybe I can use that KN95 mask right
Yeah, I was
now.
gonna say you got your COVID mask still.
Yeah, so I got plenty. I never used to have those lying around at all, but now I seem to have a abundance. I could probably fill a closet full of them now. But yeah, I actually put one on and helped out.
I was just going to say those do help. My allergist told me specifically that because I love going for outdoor walks as a good way to like kind of just de-stress and, get outside. And he was like, you should really wear a mask, which now I feel, it's more socially acceptable. Prior to COVID, I'd be walking
Right.
around in a mask. I'd be like, okay, people are looking at me weirdly. And now it's not,
Yeah.
even, you don't think
Why does
twice.
that girl have a mask on?
I
It's
know.
like 70
Why?
degrees out.
Yeah, are you staining some furniture, or
Yeah,
like
exactly. But
you
it
putting up
does.
some drywall?
Yeah, it does. It does help because it prevents those allergens from getting in. But yeah, even on those windy days, like I'll be walking outside and I'll be like, oh my gosh, my eyes are itching already because stuff is just blowing. So yeah.
So obviously weather affects, all the allergens and things of that nature. But I got to tell you, a lot of times, I'm talking with my dad, and he's getting on the older side, and he's just like, "Oh man, my hip and my knee are starting to hurt, and oh man, there must be a storm coming," or something like that. Now, Jen, with your research into this stuff, have you found any correlation with actual? Is there any truth to this? Oh, I feel it in my bones situation for storms.
So there really is. And this is, yeah, there really is. And this is something that I kind of picked up, um, you know, growing up. Also, with my family, we have some chronic neck and back issues, and I would, I also have them as well. So I'd be like, man, like my back's really, kind of bothering me today. And, so kind of similar across, my family. And then we all see a family chiropractor. And when I really started getting into weather, he showed me, he was like, look at this instrument that I have. And I was like, wow. And I come over and he has a huge barometer on his wall in his office. And he pretty much is like, yeah, like this is what I use. So when people tell me, yeah, I'm really not feeling good today, he's noticed over the years that it is impacted by the barometric pressure dropping. And like I said, he has that huge barometer on his wall and he uses that, kind of pretty religiously, which is cool to see the medical side of things interacting with the weather side of things, and how, people in medicine really are using kind of the weather so strongly. But yeah, so when someone says they can feel a storm coming and, their back or their bad knee or a previous injury or something, they're probably not lying, and it's largely caused by a fall. And like I said, that barometric pressure. So, barometric pressure is,
Dr. D'Lorio, you want in an ER? Dr. D'Lorio, ER, please.
oh God. Yeah, no, that barometric pressure is the force or the weight of the air in the atmosphere upon a point on Earth, which is the force or weight of air on us as well. And a fall in barometric pressure typically happens soon before a storm arrives. So that's why people will say, oh God, there must be a storm coming because my back is killing me or whatnot. And it's a typical cause for the shock absorbing parts of your joints to swell, overly extend or turn stiff, and become achy or painful.
Now, would this be like, are we talking like a thunderstorm versus like a bigger widespread storm, like an area of low pressure? I mean, is there a difference, you think? I mean, do people say, oh, there's a storm coming? When they say a storm coming, do they mean like a quick storm, or can they feel like a bigger, long-lived, like, more of a one-day rain event or something like that?
Yeah, I think it's dependent on the person. I know for me personally, it's more of these big low pressure
Right.
systems
A
are what
long
makes them,
duration storm. Yeah.
yeah, the long duration with, those kind of long drawn out falls and barometric pressure and then rises and whatnot. But, summer thunderstorms or whatever, thunderstorms just coming in general, can cause a quick fall in pressure. And also, when that pressure is accompanied by a fall in temperature, rainy conditions, which, can happen with summer thunderstorms, that can amplify the negative effects on the joints as well.
So you were talking about a fall in barometric pressure that was causing some of this issue. Now, is this because there's just less pressure on your joints? So then, like the stuff in between, since I'm not a doctor, I don't know if it's the cartilage or whatever it may be. Does that allow that to expand or something, and that's why it causes pain?
I think what it does is it
I know you're not a
extends.
doctor, Jen, but
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah. No, 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 no. I think what it does is it just extends it. I mean, the way my chiropractor and a few people I have talked to about it is like, if you imagine like just a box of air over your head, when the barometric pressure is falling, think of that falling down closer to you. So if you put like something kind of heavy over your head and then just keep pressing and pressing down, it's going to cause things to compress and cause more pressure from kind of the top down. That's almost kind of the way I look at it. And then once, that storm passes, it eventually releases, you kind of go back into a state of normalcy. What we'll talk about, I don't know if we want to lead into this right now, but for people that suffer from headaches and migraines, that transition back to a state of normalcy can also trigger, a migraine
Yeah,
or a
that's a
headache.
good lead in there, because that's gonna be our next topic. And I know, I mean, I think everyone. Thankfully, I don't suffer from migraines, but I know a lot of people that do, and I know, Jen, you suffer from them too. I guess it's different from everybody, though. But I mean, I've known people that just basically can almost black out from the pain. It's so bad, and others are just like, it's an eye migraine. It's really not that bad.
Right, right. I mean, there's a magnitude of different types of migraines. And honestly, if you read some of the research on migraines, there's really so much not known about them still, which is kind of a little scary. Um, but yes, I am a migraine sufferer. My mom is a migraine sufferer. It runs in the
I'm
family.
gonna say it's a lot of
Um,
hereditary
Yep.
involved.
Yeah,
Sure.
it runs on my mom's side for sure. Um, so there is a magnitude of different causes of migraines and a magnitude of different pains that people can feel. Like you said, Brad, some people just like, like my vision's a little messed up. I don't even have any pain. That's a type of migraine. Then you have migraines with pain. You have migraines that are just in the neck. I mean, there's a multitude of combinations, but with weather specifically, it's linked to a various type of weather phenomena. And experts believe that people who get frequent headaches have a greater sensitivity to changes in the environment. And kind of, I mean, you can read research of, back in the day, obviously you didn't have WeatherWorks telling you that there was going to be a, big storm system coming or something like that. You didn't have the technology to know when the weather was changing. You had to do it based off of your body and how you were feeling. So people believe that, experts and researchers believe that back in the day, when an individual would get a migraine, it was supposed to be like a trigger to tell your body, get inside, seek safer shelter, something like that. Um,
So Brad, is this what you did years ago? Back in the day when you had
Oh,
to forecast the weather, you just
yeah, yeah,
kind
just run outside and see. Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. If your
of I'm
joints
just
start hurting
busting
you,
on you, man.
no, if I'm just gonna say, if your joints start hurting you and you start getting a migraine, then it's gonna be a bad storm, because it's all it sounds like the barometric pressure. Yeah, it's like
yeah, exactly. And yet like I said, it's linked to a various number of weather phenomena, but barometric pressure changes is the top weather-related cause of headaches and migraines. And actually 2/3 of migraine sufferers have found that a change in barometric pressure triggers their migraines. And it for sure does for me. I mean, it's honestly one of my worst triggers for migraines, and some of the worst migraines I've had have been caused by barometric pressure changes.
When you start feeling a migraine coming on, in your case, Jen, you know it's going to be either a not a bad one or a mild one, or is it going to be like a bad one? Where you don't know until.
I don't know. So the ones, I will say this, the ones where I know it's going to be bad is when like you were saying earlier, Brad, some people just have the weird vision impacts. I normally don't get those. So if I do get that prior to getting a migraine, I know it's going to be one that knocks me out because I can probably count on two hands the amount of times I've had like a vision change or an aura prior to a migraine. And when I do have that, it's a pretty bad one.
I get that too, though, but they say that's kind of a migraine. I mean, maybe once every couple of months I'll get one on.
Yeah,
if my right eye, if my right eye gets a little, then my left side of my head hurts a little bit afterwards. It's weird.
And some people, like I've also had 85% of my migraines are painful. But people sometimes just get completely migraines without pain. And I have gotten a few of those where it's just, you have auras, vision changes, dizziness, but absolutely no pain, or very, very mild pain. I don't know which one's better. They both kind of suck. But
I would, yeah.
There's a magnitude of different kinds, but yeah, that's the only time where I can tell, yeah, this is going to be a really bad one. Otherwise, it's just kind of, wait and see and do what I can. That I know I've been dealing with this since I was little. I know how to, kind of treat it and help to mitigate it. But anyway, yeah. So like I said, 2/3 of migraine sufferers are impacted by that change in barometric pressure. And as we were talking about with the aches and pains, that fall in barometric pressure is what causes, someone's back to hurt, knee to hurt, a previous injury to, be achy prior to a storm arriving. But then as that pressure is released, people normally feel, it could take a little more time to regulate out, but things gradually start to improve. As that barometric pressure changes back for individuals, kind of back to a normal state for those that suffer from migraines, that can actually be a trigger as well. So many a times I get a migraine prior to a big storm system coming. It levels out, it gets a little bit better, and then I get another migraine as that storm system is exiting, and we get back to, high pressure, sunny skies as that high pressure builds
back
in.
Secondary low develops along the coast, and then you have a headache with weather too, trying to figure out where the rain snow line is.
Yes, and then that's always a great time too. So yeah, many don't realize that as that storm system exits, and, conditions are turning dry or sunny, or you're like, wow, it's a beautiful day out, but I feel, really bad still. Well, that pressure's still changing as that high pressure is moving in, and people don't realize that is a migraine trigger as well. So pretty much how the barometric pressure influences migraines is that, pressure changes can have an effect on the pressure sensitive receptors of the brain, or could even cause an imbalance in brain chemicals, which can trigger a migraine. Pressure changes can also cause a difference in the pressure of the air outside, of your, head, sinuses, just think, the ambient air, plus the air inside of your sinuses. So that pressure difference can lead to, sinus pressure and a sinus related headache, similar to as if you were going, I know some people when they fly, they feel, kind of some intense pressure in their ears, their, kind of face around their sinuses. It's a very similar thing, but now it's happening with the barometric pressure changing as a storm system is coming or leaving.
So we talked a lot about migraines and really appreciate all the information, but there's so many other impacts that the weather can have on so many other things related to your health. So I'd like to move on to the immune system a little bit too, because you've always heard like, hey, don't go out there in the cold without a jacket on or a sweater or something like that. You'll catch a cold. Is there any truth to that? Because it seems like an old wives' sort of tale, but
yeah, it's similar to that. Like, oh, is there any truth to people feeling a storm coming in their bones?
Yeah, sure.
And there is truth to that too, that cold weather does have a negative impact on the immune system, and it can make it easier to catch infections or illnesses. So the reason for that really is not, yes, has something to do with the cold weather, but it's more of kind of like the secondary effects of cold weather. And that is, when it's cold out, who wants to be outside? So you want to spend a lot of time inside in the warmth when it's cold. Because people are spending more time inside, they're in closer contact with other people. Maybe take the last, 2 years aside with COVID, but you're more in contact with other people inside, and it's easier to spread flus, coughs, colds, etc. Increased time spent indoors as well also reduces an individual's vitamin D levels due to less sun exposure. And vitamin D actually, people think, oh, when you're sick, take vitamin C, make sure you take vitamin C so you don't get sick. Vitamin D is actually more important than vitamin C for immune response and keeping a healthy and strengthened immune system. And when that is reduced by being inside, not being exposed to the sun, that can be lessened, and then people can catch, colds and coughs and flus more easily.
So it's more of a secondary effect because it's cold, you're around more people and just clustered more tightly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I always said that when I was landscaping, and this is going to date me a little bit, but there was a time when the swine flu or the H1N1,
The bird flu, yeah, all that
was
stuff.
going around, and
back in the day. No.
yeah, back in the day, and I was landscaping at time outside cutting grass, and I'm like, well, I'm probably in the best place I could be because I'm out in the middle of nowhere cutting grass, outside. I'm not, as long as the 3 people in the truck with me, weren't
Yeah.
sick,
Yep.
this is a good place to be rather than some sort of office building setting that's very tight and clustered.
Right, right. Yeah, no, and I mean, honestly, like on the nicer days that we have, in the winter months where it's sunny, a little bit mild, make sure you take the advantage to get outside, get some of that vitamin D. And I mean, even going out on colder days isn't bad. Obviously, the sun is helpful kind of no matter what. But if you are going out on those colder days, it is important to, like you said, we were talking about earlier, Mike, making sure you bundle up, because you don't really want that cold air to kind of get into your body, and kind of, yes, while it is a secondary effect of being inside more, the cold air has been proven to biologically affect the way that the body can respond to infections and illness. And with cells, and pretty much what researchers have shown is that, like, cells within the body exposed to lower temperatures have a decreased immune response to foreign pathogens or illnesses or something like that. So while, yes, the cold is, kind of a secondary effect of staying inside, there also is some proof to the fact of that, by getting a chill in your body, like people say, you can get sick.
Yeah, you know what? And even like in the middle of winter, you were saying, and maybe you had a rough couple of days at work, or you've had a lot of snow and like cloudy, nasty days. If you get that real nice sunny day, even like the middle of January, even though it's going to be 25 degrees, go outside, get some sunshine. It just brightens up my mood. I think it's like, oh, the sun's out, and it feels good, even though it's cold. And I think that just sometimes helps me, and I'm sure it helps a lot of people, just to get the sun going. And even when you start to notice the sun coming up earlier as you get further into winter, you're maybe like thinking, all right, spring's not that far away. But I know there's that seasonal affective disorder too, Jen, that affects a lot of people too. And I don't know if I have it, maybe because I think everyone gets really down and like, oh, the doldrums of winter, and especially when you're in our business, it's like every day you're dealing with weather impacts from snow and ice and trying to forecast them, and it's just kind of wears you down after a while.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's clinically been proven that weather has an impact on mood. I know for me, I mean, I love a good rainy day. Don't get me
Oh,
wrong.
no, yeah.
Yeah, but a week of rain is, oof, that's rough. But especially for me, I'm not overly fond of the cold. So, cold weather for an extended period of time, I'm like, let's get this out. Let's get some, nice mild warmth in here so I can get outside. But the sun is a big thing. And fewer hours of sunlight in the fall and the winter has been proven to kind of disrupt someone's internal clock. And what that can do is allow for a blue mood, as you would call it, and clinically by medical professionals, this is called seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, which is a pretty good, 3-letter
What's that called?
abbreviation.
Acronym, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yep.
acronym.
Yeah.
So
It's sad that I have SAD.
yeah, exactly. And research does continue to show that time spent outside on pleasant weather days can combat stress, anxiety, and depression for those that suffer, especially those that suffer from SAD.
Yeah, definitely interesting. I wonder how people up in Alaska and around the Arctic Circle deal with the fact that they have sunlight pretty much not at all.
I
During
wouldn't fare well.
All right. Well, you know what? While we're on this topic too, let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is big news the last, I guess, couple of weeks. Social media, it's all over Twitter. It's in Congress right now, and that is, of course, the Sunshine Protection Act. Let's talk a little bit about that, because it kind of does, like Jen was just saying, affect your health, and less daylight. It definitely impacts you, and maybe leads to the seasonal affective disorder to a point.
The
But
funny
I mean,
the funny thing with this, Brad, it's like they call it the Seasonal or Sunshine Protection Act. It's like it's
yeah,
still going to be the same amount of
right.
sunshine, okay? It's not like we can add sunshine. I mean, we can't do anything about that unless you're going to change the orbit and the
Yeah.
rotation of the Earth. That's not going to change. So it's kind of
Where's
a
Austin
funny
Powers
title.
when you need him?
Yeah,
You could
yeah,
change it.
yeah. We can slow down the Earth's rotation, right? No problem. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, this is a pretty big deal. And while it might seem good that, hey, the sun doesn't set so early in the dead of winter, um, you know,
There's payback for it.
yeah, I mean, you got to think of those sunrises too. I mean, there's some examples here up in North Dakota where, your sunrise might not be until 9:42 in the
Yeah,
morning.
there's the one in North Dakota. I mean, currently in the middle of winter, 8:42, which is bad enough. But
Rough, I
granted,
was just going to say.
granted they're way up there. Their latitudes, pretty high up there. But still, now you're talking about a sunrise at 9:42, and all you're getting out of it is a sunset, 5:03 versus 6:03. I mean, is it really worth it?
Yeah.
9:42 sunrise is just ridiculous to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how our listeners feel about this out there. If you want, you could send us an email and let us know how you feel about this.
I'm wondering if this is one of
But
those things where, like, it seems like this has been the going thing the last couple of years. I'll get rid of, daylight saving time. It's a mess. So why would change it? And now watch, it's going to pass Congress. Biden's going to sign it. It's going to turn into, I guess what I've read also is if it is passed and everything, we won't start this though until the fall of 2023. So we'll still change the clocks this fall, next spring, and then the following fall is when it'll go into effect. But and then what'll happen 5 years from now? Oh, this is ridiculous. Let's go back to daylight saving time.
I'll be completely honest. I was all about getting rid of daylight savings times until, because I was like, oh, changing the clocks. It's so stupid. It messes up my internal clock of sleeping,
Yeah.
yada, yada, yada. And then, looking at some of the stuff, I mean, 4:55 a.m. sunrise in Philly on the summer solstice. No, thank you. Summer's a lot of the times where people want to sleep in. And yeah, I'm not fond of that, and I'm definitely not fond of the close to 9 a.m. sunrise times.
Yeah. Now here's another example going the other way. If we keep, like in Boston, if we keep it standard all year, sunrise is 4:06 in the morning in the summer. Now the sunset though is 7:22. Now that's if we keep it standard. That's not daylight saving time, which we would be stuck in anyway. It would be daylight saving time. But still, the sunrise in at 5:06 in the morning. I never even realized it was that early.
this is if we don't change the clocks and we
Right, if
stay
we didn't,
in the winter time, basically.
Right.
That we usually have. So that's interesting too. If we stayed standard time, then the other way around doesn't look good either.
No, I,
You
I
know, so so maybe this changing twice a year isn't all that terrible, honestly. And didn't we do a Twitter poll, Brad, on the WeatherWorks Twitter account? And
we did actually. I haven't looked. I can look right now and see where
yeah,
we're
and
at
I
with that.
I think it was something like 57% said no, I want to keep changing the clocks. I believe. I don't
Yeah,
think
I'll check the
everybody was
final poll here
super in
right
favor.
now.
The funny thing is like, when we finally get everybody in our government to agree on something, then then the people are going, wait a minute,
Hold on, we don't want this anymore.
hold on, this doesn't sound like a good idea when we really get into the brass tacks.
Yeah, 40% wanted to keep daylight saving time permanent. Wanted to make it permanent. Actually, 60% said no, leave it alone. I
Leave it
guess.
alone.
Yeah.
Wow, interesting. Maybe we should send that off to Congress. How do we get it there?
This is a WeatherWorks poll.
Yeah.
Please take it into account.
I just, as a general average, though, let's take Philadelphia here. This in the middle of winter. So on the first day of winter, the sun wouldn't come up until 8:57 a.m. That seems late.
Yeah, that's pretty late. I
I
don't
mean,
know.
then the sun stays out until 6:02. But you know what? I don't mind 4:45, 5 o'clock sunset in December, early January. It kind of goes with the territory. You're kind of looking forward to fall and winter. Then who cares?
What do you do? Then the thought is kids going to school and stuff like that. They're all going to get on the bus in the dark.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, high school
you
kids
know,
probably already get on the bus in the
Yeah,
dark now.
I got on the bus in the dark.
Yeah, but
unless
this would be
they
even worse.
unless they push back the time and say, hey, we're not going to start school until 8:30 or 9 o'clock.
Yeah, well, then yeah, you're messing with everything. That's I just think an 8:57 a.m. sunrise in Philadelphia on December 21st is a little much. That's
That's
all.
a rough one. Yeah, in my opinion.
All right, well let's move on from the old daylight savings and SAD problems, which I think is probably one of the most accurate acronyms I've ever heard.
Yeah, it
I
is.
know, it really is.
But how about skin? I know the weather can really impact the skin. I mean, I know in the wintertime it gets very dry. A lot of times I get a rash on my hands and drier hands than usual. So let's go over that a little bit, huh?
Yeah, so winter weather especially can exacerbate common skin conditions such as rosacea, eczema, and psoriasis. And the main reason for that is you're exposed to dry outdoor air, and then you come into indoor heat, both of which dry out the skin and can cause the skin to lose moisture and become, red, dry, and itchy, the things that we, really don't want. But, one of the things that can help that is making sure you're wearing those gloves outside in the winter is a huge help, and just continually to using, when you're washing your hands, using warm water, making sure you're drying thoroughly, and then applying lotion and moisturizer pretty consistently is what you can do.
I was just gonna say I'm dainty when it comes to my hands. I hate dry hands. I hate the way it feels. It hurts. So I'm always putting on the hand lotion, and usually by November, that's when I usually can tell that it's all right. Well, it looks like winter season's moving in here.
Yeah, and the lips too.
And you get those cracks on your hand. Ugh, I hate that.
No, it's not good. It's not fun.
I was firmly in the camp for a long time of, oh, come on now, that's just, you can't be using moisturizer,
Tough it out,
Brad. You're,
yeah.
come on, get over this, But then as I'm, getting older here, I'm thinking, look at that. Oh, my hand
I
is,
know it feels
this is
good.
no good. Even though I have like calluses on my hands from, lifting weights or something like that, but, because I always like looked at that as, oh, look at that, it's a sign of toughness. Look at my hand, but now it's like, you know what, that moisturizer's not too bad a thing to put on at night before you go to bed. I tell you that.
Yeah, and that's honestly the best time to do it, because think about it, like you're going to put it on and then go to sleep, and sleep for how many hours without disruption to, washing your hands, washing it off, whatnot. People that have it, sometimes in the dead of winter when my hands are really dry, what I do is I actually put gloves on at night. I put lotion on, then I put gloves on, and it just keeps the moisture locked in, for some of those people who have the, more severe conditions. But it's really not something to, kind of mess around about, because, and it's true, moisturizer does keep your skin looking young. Um, so yeah, but it's not just the winter too. I mean, in the summer, as we know, you sit out in the sun all day without sunscreen on if you're not, super Italian, which despite my last name of D'Lorio, I do not tan very well, because I do have some of the Irish skin in there as well. But, if you sit out in the sun all day long and, you just kind of sit there without sunscreen, you can get a burn. So hot temperatures and intense sunlight can also aggravate the skin because it dilates the blood vessels, increases blood flow to the skin. So in addition to, causing sunburn, it can allow for, areas or certain parts of the skin to just become irritated, itchy, inflamed, and annoyed.
Yeah, and sunburn is an interesting one,
It's sneaky.
yeah, and I know, from my wife who has fair skin, even if it's cloudy outside, if she's outside all day, she can still get burned, like, and not, I'm not talking like a dense overcast, but if there's, a mostly cloudy day where you're getting sun popping through every now and then, or even like filtered sun through some high clouds, um, you know, she can still get burned. I mean, she got burned the other day when we were outside when it was a nice, over the last weekend, it was near 70 degrees. And even myself, and I'm not usually one that burns that easily. I got burned because I was out washing cars and stuff like that all day. So
And especially, the first, I think there is some truth. I haven't done much research on this, but I think there is some truth to that. If you get burned, you're more likely to burn kind of that first sun, long-term, kind of sun exposure early in the season. Cause I just think, like, you're in during the winter, you're inside all the time. You're really not exposing your skin to a lot of sun. And then if you just kind of just go, for a long, like, I'm going to sit on the beach now for 8 hours, first day of the whole season, your skin probably is going to take a little bit of a time to adjust. But
No, I always notice I burn the worst in like the first time I go out, like to play golf or something, in like maybe April or something. Then I'm okay the rest of the summer. It's like it's weird.
yeah, no, I think like I said, I haven't done a lot of research on that, but I think there is some truth to it. And everyone is different. And a lot of it, I think, is based off of your, genetics, ethnicity, things like that. I mean, it's a funny sight when the D'Lorios go to the beach, because you have my dad, who's 100% Italian, who never gets burnt. I'm somewhere in the middle. And then my mom is mostly Irish, and she's in, SPF protective from head to toe.
SPF 100.
Yeah,
the highest you can
literally.
find.
So, so yeah, it is rather funny.
So I guess the last thing that we wanted to talk about was effects on the heart that the weather can have, and maybe this pops up a little bit more in the summer, from what I can think about, Jen.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, pretty much it's just extreme temperatures is what can put a strain on people. And it can be on anyone, whether you have a healthy heart or someone that is suffering from a few heart conditions or heart disease or whatnot. Just, any kind of extreme can really hold an impact, and can put you at risk for a heart attack or stroke. So for example, in the winter, cold temperatures can cause those blood vessels to constrict and make your heart work harder to circulate the blood. In the summer, kind of the opposite goes, where, extremely hot temperatures can cause a strain as well. The thing that kind of goes in tangent with the kind of extreme temperatures and the extreme weather is kind of like a similar, as we were talking about earlier, I forget about what now, but a secondary effect is when there's, extreme temperatures, extreme weather, whatnot. Typically, there's kind of some type of extraneous activity involved. The biggest thing that comes to mind for me in the winter is, you have a big snowstorm, then you got to clean it up. So people that are, shoveling, taking care of their, their homes, whatever the situation is, that can put a strain on the heart, especially if you do not exercise regularly or if your heart is unhealthy. I mean, unfortunately, I hear stories every year on after big snowstorms, someone locally passes away from a heart attack or stroke from shoveling snow.
I think that's important there, that people understand that that activity is pretty strenuous. So don't just hop out of your house and put on some warm clothes and just go right away, shoveling, shoveling, shoveling. A lot of people say, maybe loosen up a little bit first, like, maybe
Especially when you get some of those,
stretch.
like this past winter, we had some of those real dense. Oh my God! I think it was that one storm. It was like 2.5 inches of just slop, and it felt like it was like a foot.
Yeah, and when it's the heavy, dense snow or several inches is what can really, put the strain on the heart. Forget about, I mean, sometimes I go out and shovel snow very infrequently, if I may add, and my dad will concur with that if you ask. But sometimes I go out and I'm like, oh my gosh, because again, I have the chronic back issues or whatnot. I'm like, man, like you wouldn't think like shoveling snow, like it's going to be as taxing on your body as it is, but it's a workout. And like I said, if you have that unhealthy heart, there's things that you have to be avoiding it if you can, but also, taking frequent breaks, kind of checking in with yourself. In the summer, when it's really hot, really humid, just avoiding things that don't need to get done on that certain day, like yard work, sports, kind of similar activities in extreme heat, because the overexertion, whether in, shoveling snow or performing yard work in the summer, raises the risk of a heart attack or a stroke.
Funny story, I should say. I mean, I know we're talking about heart attacks and strokes, so it shouldn't be funny. But my dad played a joke on my uncle one time because he saw that there was a heat wave coming, and so he said he called up his brother, who's a few years older than him, and he just said, I just wanted to call to see how you're doing. And I was just concerned a little bit. He goes, what do you mean? Concerned about what? He's like, well, they said check up on the elderly, so I thought I'd give you a call. And oh man, my uncle got pretty upset about that one. He said, "You know what? You're not too far off there, too, pal." To my dad. So, but anyway, I just thought it was a fun story, even though we're talking about some serious.
So yeah, I mean, like we could talk. I could talk about, this is kind of just scratching the surface of the impacts that weather can have on health.
Did you want? Oh, I think we skipped one. I think we want to talk a little bit about asthma too. I mean, only because that kind of coincides with dense cold air versus humidity in the summertime.
I did want to just touch on that real quick because I know in the past, if it's been in the winter and very cold and I went out for a jog,
It's hard to breathe.
like when I got back in, I was like, coughing and couldn't catch breath and stuff like that. And
Do you have asthma, Mike, or
I I,
just
I don't think so,
okay?
but maybe I do a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe and Mike's now gonna head to the doctor later today. Now,
Hey, you check on this a minute.
yeah, but no, I mean, I think just the average person who doesn't have asthma will find that that's an impact. But people who especially have asthma, pretty much since asthma is related to an inflammation of the airways, any change or any kind of weather related occurrence that changes the air that you breathe can cause a flare up. So for example, as Mike was alluding to, you go out in the winter, especially if you're going to do exercise, that, cold, dry air, when that gets into your lungs, I know when it gets into my lungs as being an asthmatic person, it's like, knives of, trying to breathe over, what that cold air is doing. So, pretty much what it does is that cold and dry air dehydrates parts of the airways that are called the bronchial tubes. And what it does is it causes them to narrow and therefore restricts the airflow, which can make it feel like it's harder to breathe. Kind of going back to the mask wearing outdoors, but that is something that does help in the winter, because if you think about it, when you're wearing your mask, I always kind of feel like a little sense of warmth because you're kind of rebreathing in a little bit of your own air, which is kind of nasty if you think about it. But it's still, preventing some of that, intense cold air from
Cold air
getting
getting
in.
in, yeah.
Or what I do too is, kind of wrapping a scarf around my mouth or something like that kind of helps. But the other thing too is the high heat and humidity can make the air heavier and harder to breathe. So the summer isn't really that good either. I mean, the humidity really just makes it so much more dense and harder to, kind of breathe. So that's something that asthmatics need to be aware of as well. And on another note, windy conditions and rain can also trigger an asthma attack in some, if you're especially, triggered by, again, the wind or extra moisture that the rain causes. And then allergies and asthma go hand in hand. And we already talked about, quite in depth of the impact that weather has on allergies. So if the weather is impacting allergies and making those more severe or whatnot, that can also lead for, asthma and a flare up and irritations as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that about covers it, though, Jen. I mean,
Yeah, well, like Jen said, we're just scratching the surface. I mean, we can probably get a little more in depth in another one.
yeah, we could probably have a part 2 of this for sure.
I mean, and the research you can find on this is just, I was like a little overwhelmed. I was like, woof, there's a lot of things I could talk about, but
Hey, Jen, did you say you're going to see your allergist?
I'm getting allergy shots later today.
Maybe you should talk and see if he wants to be a guest on the podcast.
There you go. There you go. I could ask a multitude. I could ask my chiropractor if he wants to come on.
Oh, that might be good too. It might be good to get, some of the actual doctors that deal with these weather-related illnesses and health effects to come on and get that, expert opinion on everything. Yeah, this was really great podcast. And Jen,
Yeah, good work, Jen.
yeah,
Excellent.
thanks for being with us today and informing
Thanks
us.
for having me on.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great overview of all the impacts that the weather can have on your health. So I think we'll have you on again, Jen, if you have a good topic for us to talk about, because I think this was fun.
I love it. Yeah, no, I had a great time. Thanks for having me on. And like I said, not a medical professional, but just going off of what I feel and what I've researched. And feel free, all the listeners out there. I mean, when I ask my doctors these questions, they're excited to have that I have an interest in learning about certain aspects of health, because that's what they do. So ask your doctors if you have questions. So.
Well, that about wraps it up for this episode of the Weather Lounge. Special thanks to meteorologist Jen D'lorio coming on the program today as our guest. Remember, we'll have a new podcast every 2 weeks, so continue to check back on all your favorite podcasting platforms. You can always search the Weather Lounge and find us there. And as always, you can visit weatherworksinc.com. That is our company, and you'll find a lot about what we do right there. So thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.